Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, say this is the morning podcast with Jacob and Ethan.
This is hell.
Maybe the exact
No, it's
opposite
a
reason.
cry for help,
Coming home,
Austin.
yeah,
It's a
that's what
cry
it
for
is.
help.
Just gives
Do you
some
buy
big
that?
attention.
Do you buy that?
I try not to, but as the years go by, I can see the case for it more and more. I think TV's done a good job.
Well, there's actually one of my favorite plays of Shakespeare, Troilus and Cressida, which is based off a poem by Chaucer. And it's kind of that same plot where this woman, she cheats on her boyfriend, fiance, Troilus. But basically, like, he was a
He's more than
complete...
Troilus.
What?
Said he's more than Troilus.
Right. But basically he was like, you could see in the play, he was a fuckhead to her most of the play. So like, even though she does this, it's justified in a way. And I guess I can see there are some circumstances where, like, I don't know. I guess the cry for help thing it's not completely always invalid.
Yeah.
But I do think it is something that, like, someone who gets caught cheating, they resort to as a means of defense no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you were being shitty to me, so now this is the reason.
It's fine now.
Yeah.
It's one of those two wrongs don't make a right scenario.
Right. I'm anti-marital affair.
I wish I had more examples, but it's kind of stuff like that. As you get older, you notice the gray area expands on a lot of things. Like, you're taught, black and white rules as a kid, but I think as you get older, you can see there's a lot of individual scenarios that aren't always what they appear to be. I wish I had an example.
Well, no, I know what you mean, and I think too, the older you get, the more your personal margin for error has to expand. Like, when I was young and dating or talking to girls, like, if they slipped up once or twice, that was it.
Yeah, deal breaker, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, screw this. But the older you get, the more you're like, the older you get, the more you see good things slip away without much of a good reason. Or that you let good things get away from you and you shouldn't have. So I just think the older you get, the more you're like, okay, I'm going to put up with shit because it's, like, not worth the F. Like, it's not guaranteed you're going to get something better always in the end.
Mm-hmm. It's half mindset, half tolerance level, but I think even more, it's more drawing on past experiences.
Yeah. Also, you can also look back and see things you've done wrong. Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, okay, I can't.
I could have handled that better.
Right. I feel like the more wrong I do, the more I realize, like, okay, I can't judge this other
You
person.
can't keep these other people to standards 10 times your own.
Right. Because I can't hold myself to that standard. I don't feel good for some things I've done, but you get mad at someone for the way they hurt you, and then you hurt someone else in that exact same way, and then you realize, like, oh, it's just kind of easy to hurt people sometimes.
No longer the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
That's, to me, like, I know everyone's always talking about this woke stuff. To me, it's stuff like that. That, to me, is a woke moment in a good way.
Woke.
Woke.
Well,
Yeah, I
what's
never
your
thought
woke
those
moment?
words would come out of my mind.
Elaborate, please.
Oh, boy.
Proceed.
My take's probably not the correct word, but anyone who uses woke usually actually just turns me off to the conversation.
I thought you were just going to full stop. Anyone who just uses the word woke turns me off.
That, too.
Okay.
I repel myself.
Is that your safe word? Woke. Oh, shit.
No comment.
Anyway, keep going. What was the argument you were making?
About woke?
Yeah, you were talking about woke.
I think it's there's some justification to all this stuff going on today, but there's also, I think, these are both terrible examples, but you know how, like, when COVID first became hot, whether you were sick with it or not, you were diagnosed as a COVID member. That's how I feel with a lot of these situations today. Not just the police shootings and all the bad stuff like that, but everything is, how can I turn this moment as something to shoot as an example or a cause to get behind when it probably was just maybe like a penny's worth of an incident, not like $1.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow you. Do you have an example?
I wish I did.
I feel like something...
There are probably some good examples. The worst part, though, is nobody waits till facts come out, but I can also don't blame them, because in a lot of things as you get older, don't you feel like the facts are kind of tampered with or stacked?
Well, so let's double back there. I do think, like, one thing I've been thinking of is the whole gender pronouns thing. Like, and I'm not even talking about gender pronouns for like transgender people. I'm talking about gender pronouns, just like writ large. Like, let's throw transgender out of the equation. Like the fact.
They're not gonna like that.
What?
Let's throw them out of the equation.
Yeah. Transgender people don't matter.
All 0.07% of the country is now up in arms with this podcast.
Cancel Jacob. Cancel Jacob movement. I'm the first member. Cancel me. I'm canceling myself, motherfucker.
You cannot be God.
I cannot be God. I get myself. No one makes me bleed my own blood. No one. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the gender pronouns thing, and how some people think we should just get rid of gender pronouns and get rid of gendered addresses. You can come in if you want to come in for the Zach, our host, and his
for the evidence
child.
tape, you're bringing evidence SO01. This is sausage for those who can't see the.
Oh, he's bringing us a plate of sausage.
Time of interview.
Man.
Eggs will be coming shortly.
10 minutes.
Beautiful.
Eggs.
I don't know what we did to deserve such blessings.
You know, as I go, I find I just don't ask that question. I just eat it guilt free, and then reflect on it on the drive home.
Anyway, the gender pronouns thing, it's like, it's not a battle worth waging. You know what I mean? There are real problems in your life and real questions like, who are you? What do you exist for? You know, people are police brutality, institutional racism. There's just a whole, and that's just in America, and we're a very privileged country. So I just think that, like, gendered pronouns is not the war worth waging.
That's the small battle for when the big wars are no longer captivating.
Right, you're not
There'll
fighting.
never be a shortage of.
You're only fighting over he versus she usage when you have nothing left to worry about.
To me, it's kind of, there's the guy in New York who always makes his cardboard protest signs, and they're just the funniest off the wall things.
I haven't seen this. No.
Let's say Chick-fil-A got rid of a sauce or something. His signs would be like, "Bring back this sauce." And he just holds it up. No one ever joins his movements, and he has all these just really simple things like "Bring back Sesame Street." All these things, or "Don't stop chewing gum on the phone." Those are all his messages. I feel like that's how this probably got started. And now it's evolved to maybe 2 people instead of just the one.
I went on a coffee date last week with this girl.
I need some. Go ahead on that. But I'm gonna come back to this.
Yeah.
I don't understand coffee dates.
You don't understand coffee dates?
No, I guess maybe because I don't drink coffee.
Okay, well,
Go ahead and tell your story first.
Yeah, well, it was not really much of a story, but this girl showed up in a giant sweater and chomping on a piece of gum.
Sounds homely.
It wasn't even homely. I'm sitting across from this girl and she's drinking coffee and chomping on gum at the same time. Didn't even take out the gum for the first 10 minutes. So not only is she being disgusting, but she's also a sociopath. 'Cause it's like drinking orange juice and chewing gum at the same time.
Brushing your teeth and drinking orange juice.
Right.
Back and forth.
There's just a whole series of things you shouldn't do. And she was a nice girl, but I could not. Look, I was just like, honey, you gotta, when you go and meet somebody for a date, you gotta take the gum out of your mouth.
There's some standards you have to uphold to.
There's just, you can't, I feel like it was a form of self-protection. It's like, if I just come here kind of slovenly, then I'm not the stakes aren't very high, so if it doesn't go well, I won't feel quite as disappointed. But for me, it's like, okay, you can't even, take the time to, wear some decent clothes and not be slovenly. Zach's kid's coming down.
This one's mine.
Hey.
For those on the evidence tape, this is son.
Oh, this is yours.
This is my boy. Harrison, can you say anything? Nope. Okay.
So Austin's a proud father of a child.
Just one right now.
Hey, Chell. Austin's wife, Chell, is.
My wife in the background.
You want to get in on the audio?
We're talking about King of the Castle. These are the two that
say hi to the listeners.
Keep my home the castle.
You want to do a plug for Pittsburgh Art Walk?
Oh yeah. Well, that's not scheduled yet, but that's what I think.
Yeah, she's the proud coordinatress, or one of the coordinatrices of coordinatrix of Pittsburgh Art Walk in Pittsburgh, Kansas, sunny Pittsburgh, Kansas, SEK, Southeast Kansas, for those in the know.
I gotta watch Harrison. He wants to go back upstairs.
Right.
I mainly just came down for the bacon.
Oh, I can't say blame me there.
Our bacon. Anyway, you got a problem with coffee dates.
Maybe I just don't understand it. Has that been a thing? How long has that been a thing for? Has it been since before we were born, or?
was a thing in
I
New
didn't know
York.
about 10 years ago.
It really didn't start. I was one of the first coffee date people in the Wichita area because I remember I would ask girls out for coffee, and it was a novelty at that point. Like so many things, I am the trailblazer. But
From the bell tolls.
from the bell tolls. Actually, that reminds me. I gotta get. We'll bring that back in.
Circle the wagons.
Yeah, we'll circle the wagons for that. But I was one of the first coffee date people, and that was like circa 2012. And I picked
That's where it's at in my head. So.
I picked that shit up in New York. But it's nice because you want to get together. You want like an actual date. If it doesn't go well, you want something that you can not call a date, right? You
so
also
it's
want
informal enough to where.
Right. It's
Is the time expectation on those about 15-30 minutes? That
Well,
because you're just having a coffee, right?
that's the thing is that if it's going well, that thing can stretch for an hour or two. It's
you
just
can take it on the go. You can go places.
right, and you can, if you schedule them right, you have them at like 3 in the afternoon or 10 in the morning. If it's really going well, then you two can go out for lunch together or something.
So it's the Swiss Army knife of dating.
It's the Swiss Army knife of dating. It can be anything. And if it's going bad, you can just, I got my coffee, we had a nice chat, and I'm going now. And it's not, you can have a nice chat and still not feel a click, and it's still a pleasant thing to have done.
And, maybe I'm the bad guy for thinking this, but in my head, all I can imagine, coffee date, that's a lot less expensive for a sec. It's not as much of an initial investment.
No,
It's
that's
like
another huge thing too. It's like the actual money down is a lot less. Except sometimes you'll get a girl who'll order a triple latte frap a suck, and that shit's like $10. Like, I just know you're here because you don't usually want to buy this nonsense. Yeah, coffee dates are brilliant.
Maybe we'll try that sometime.
You would get hot chocolate.
I would get hot chocolate.
Austin does not drink coffee.
But twice a year.
Wait, what? Are you like Alex Jones with his weed? That you only smoke it once a year? What is this?
So really just all, if those who know me, I'm like what is it, the chondriac's the term you're afraid you'll like it? Was that what chondriac at its base means?
Oh, hypochondriac is you're afraid of getting sick. I don't know.
I'm like, whatever it is with addictions, so like any sort of addiction at all, like I'm really, like, it's almost weird to the point, like, if I even notice other people's things, I say, like, I don't have a lot of friends, so you don't make a lot of friends telling people what their habits are.
Telling them what their addictions are?
So, like, coffee's a well-known, like, people don't view it as a habit, they view it as a daily necessity. But, like, if I just figured, I'll probably get there someday, with kids and stuff, and you get more tired every day, that's just how life works. And I know I'll get there, but it all started in college. I'm like, I don't have the money to spend on a coffee every day. I don't need it. I've made it this far without it. Finals week, I'm like, there's always, the lineup, maybe there's 3 tests coming up in one day or just a lot. So like, that's the day I'll do the coffee and pull an extra 4 or 5 more hours. Yeah. And the nice thing is now I just kept doing it because, the 1 or 2 coffees I have a year, it works better than anyone else's coffee they've had that entire year for me because I keep it. I introduce it to my body all the time.
Well, I do notice a couple of things. Is that one, I've always been able to get down maybe to like a cup of coffee a day or maybe black tea instead of coffee, but I've never been able really to get rid of caffeine entirely. And it's always something I come back to, and it is a real addiction. It's not an addiction with crazy side effects.
Right, it's a low risk.
I will say, once you start, it's about the 4th cup of coffee. Anything over 4 is when you start to get the jitters and the anxiety and the nervousness. But otherwise, if you keep it under 4, I find I'm pretty good. But look, it's something, it creeps up on you. And if just one day, like this, we had to do basically 2 weeks of work in 1 week, last week at the mill. And I just had to drink coffee to get through those late shifts. And now, ever since, I've just been pounding back cup after cup, and it's just, my soul needs it. My soul needs it.
That's usually, I've noticed it warms my soul is the tagline the most. My wife especially, I don't need this, but it's a great way to start the day. It warms my soul.
I mean, I will say,
cold sleep just made your heart and soul harden to the world.
I will say, I think it's something that you got to do in life. It's something you got to do in life. Is you got to have a morning time to yourself. It's something I found with work is that if you are getting up right before you got to go to work, you never end up with any me time. And when you never have any me time during the day, every day feels like a slog. It feels like all you do is work and sleep. But if you carve out like 30 minutes to journal and have a cup of coffee in the morning, changes things completely.
I don't have either of those. my antenna froze over about 5 or 6 years ago. Actually, I was out here in the Wichita area, and it was ice storm and stuff. So my antenna froze over, and I never removed the ice from it. So one day I'm driving back, and the antenna just snapped off altogether. So my me time anymore is me driving my truck that picks up 0 stations now. It's just silence.
You got an
Silence 10
Oxford
minutes to
or?
work. I could do that. Well, I'd have to get the cassette.
You like the silence?
I do like the silence. It's about the only 20 minutes of my day. 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back, where it's just silence, and it's good. It's nice to have 10 minutes where I could just yell in the car the whole way home. I had that bad of a day.
Do you yell? Oh, fuck. Do you yell? Luckily, that landed somewhere. I almost spilled coffee on the carpet.
That's actually really lucky. And there it is.
Yeah. Wait, do you yell? Do you yell on your drives then?
Not very often. If anything, it's more just jokes, or it's I don't know. Actually, the most time I yell in my car is I've been my side garage door has been waging war lately. All I do is really just oil up the wheels and the track it runs on, but I just haven't done that.
Do you feel the
just go up and down all the time? So I yell at my truck. I yell at the door through my truck.
Do you feel the impotence of approaching middle age and problems encroaching on you that you can't do anything against?
Very much so, and I gotta say, they've come a lot fast. You always think you have a little bit more time for this kind of stuff, and that's not really true. I always thought, growing up, you think, the first 40 years of your life, it's always just accelerating. Everything's getting better. You reach your peak at about 40, 45, and then you slowly start to decline and what do you call it? Just become old and shrink and shrivel and whatnot. But I think it's really about 25 is my note. I'm only 27, so I can't speak too much to this, but every year everything just hurts a little more. I think 25 was the peak of life. Well, where's that in your timeline? What age would you say? Are you still going strong? Or?
By the way, I'm just letting you know, I'm only checking my phone because I'm making sure, I like to make sure we get at least an hour of audio, so I'm just keeping tracks on the time. How do I feel about where my peak was? You see, I'm in a little different place in that, how do I put this? I'm aware of this in myself too, but I have been involved in a years-long struggle to get back to the kind of social position and environment I had around 18, 19.
Oh, I miss those days.
Yeah, because I feel like at that point I had, for whatever reason, I had a lot more hair. I was a lot more popular, and things just seemed to go well for me very well. And I don't feel like I used that age right. I mean, if I'm gonna be vulgar, and I will be vulgar, I wish I had done a lot more fucking at an early age. Because there was just a lot more beautiful women and a lot more good sex to be had. And I did not take advantage of that at that time. And so I would love to go back. But I feel like if we're going to be talking about peaks, see, this is why kids never get into a religion. You'll miss out on the good sex. But Austin just like, I can't do it. My peak, I don't know. I feel like in terms of just understanding life, but also having great physical fitness and also having some measure of success that's durable and positioned in the world, I feel like I'm just now approaching my peak.
Nice.
Really in the terms of if I feel like I'm finally starting to get some momentum on the things I've been working at the last few years with the writing and now the music and kind of the podcast on the side. And physically, I'm still quite fit, and I have a lot better grasp on who I am and what I want out of life. And I did not have most of my 20s, I did not have any kind of grasp on those things. And I really don't understand how people got married. Because, I just had, how do I put this? I had so much stuff still left to figure out at, say, 24, 25, that I don't know how people had enough figured out at that point to get married. And I feel like only now am I confident and sure of myself and what I'm doing, to the point where I feel like I'm in the driver's seat of my own life, if that makes sense.
It does.
So I'd say looking back, I'll probably look back and see this period as the beginning of my peak is kind of how I see it.
Nice. So you're captaining your ship right now, aren't you?
Well, I just feel good about how do I put this? I'm definitely kind of in a money squeeze at the moment. And I can't say my living situation's incredibly secure, but it's...
But yet you're at your peak.
Well, because I just feel like I'm finally getting some headwind on the things I've been working towards. I'm finally getting some progress.
Turned a milestone.
Yeah, we're actually getting somewhere now. I don't know. What is your take? What's your take on the peaks, man? That was my take.
So the peaks of just owning life, I felt in my entire life, everything was supposed to go this one way, and I followed the path exactly. Like I didn't rebel. That's half the reason. I think I tell growing hair is not a big form of rebellion, but I never really did it. I've done everything clean cut by the book all the way through age about 25, 26. And I'm 27 now. I'm kind of realizing I didn't really, you go out for that year. You did your walks. You take those chances. You lose the money, but you bet on yourself. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I didn't do any of that, and it's too late now. I got a wonderful wife, kid, house. I wouldn't change that, but there's a part of me that always thinks I never took my shot. But that kind of haunts me. That is the last year or so.
But I was talking about this with Zach last night, right before we went to bed. It's like, what was I going to say? We were talking about this last night, and I was talking because I was bitching earlier in the evening, as I often do to Zach, about, what am I going to do in the next 3 months, 6 months? What I'm doing right now is not really sustainable long term. And then before I went to bed, I made the comment, but you know what? I can look back on my 28 years and say, okay, even if I just, sold out now, went to law school, and settled down in Kansas City, I would have a reservoir of stories. But, I've gotten something with the time and the money. And Zach's also gotten something. Zach hasn't necessarily done, moved all a bunch of different places and risked his life a few times. But, he has a nice wife and a beautiful home and a kid. And he's also gotten something out of it. And I thought about this morning. It's there are some lives that turn into zero-sum games where you put the chips down on the table and then the roulette wheel falls on the wrong number and you lose all your chips. But we really haven't gotten that. We've cashed our chips in different ways. And I would say, for me, it's not like the things I've done haven't had some kind of psychic toll or, some impact on me. There's also, how do I put this? Yeah, I've got some good stories, but there's been, real damage done. I almost was worried I was going to die in the mountains. I got, for the listeners, I spent a couple days lost in some wilderness hiking trails in Colorado a few years ago.
Is that 16 or 17?
I don't remember the year. It was, I think it was 16.
Okay.
But, that was you don't get through that. This is the Jacob Erock Breakfast is Hell podcast, so I guess we'll get into this. I started having panic attacks earlier this year. Never had it in my life, and a large part is just not having dealt with that experience. Not having dealt with that experience of being lost in the mountains, thinking I was going to die. And so I guess it's you can romanticize someone else's life, but the things that someone else has that you wish maybe you had done or you had gotten also come with their own set of costs and losses. So it's never, it's not, no one's ever got the fields of gold on the other side of the fence, is what I'm trying to get at.
That's true. Everyone always thinks the grass is greener, but both sides have their pros and cons.
Right. Pro. Con. Austin and I have this thing when we're at a party or if we're in a group. We'll just start listing off pros and cons, but it'll be
we judge what other people say as pros and cons for them. We're usually not wrong though. It's not a bad judgment. It's more of an observation.
Right. I like bacon. Pro. It's I don't know how to.
We fell off. Marriage was the only time we disagreed, I think.
Beautiful, Zach. Speaking to the mic. Tell us who you are. Or do you want to remain silent?
I don't care. I'm Zach Weber.
He's feeding us breakfast this morning.
He's rather homely as well.
Shallow and pedantic as well.
Shallow and pedantic.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Do you want salsa, ketchup, syrup?
I'm beautiful. I'm good.
We have this absolute feast before us for those of you listening.
Zach made us freaking smoked chicken last night, full-on feast for dinner. Then we had hot toddies and spiked cider.
That you made.
And now he's freaking feeding us full-on breakfast. Like this is a damn hotel.
I'll leave a good review on Yelp.
So I guess I wouldn't feel bad about where your life has gone. It's not like you got nothing out of it.
We got just enough, that's for sure.
Yeah. And there's still, you and Chell are both adventurous people. You guys are going to go and do exciting things. There's no reason why you guys can't go do exciting things together with your family.
That's true.
Because, some people marry a girl who doesn't want to go do those sorts of things. But, Chelsea's got a
That's the case. I think I'm the girl in our marriage. I'm less adventurous anymore.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like, maybe you wouldn't have...
Chelsea's always got plans and ideas.
You might have never done these things. It might be that marriage to Chel pushes you to do more of the adventurous stuff.
In a way.
Yeah.
I would say it pushes a bit. It keeps me with that mindset. Because, high school and college, you took every chance you did to do something. It's going to be either a great story or a bad story, but one or another, you got a story to tell,
Yeah. That is one thing I would say to the young people is, when you're young, to our massive cohort of high school and early college listeners, really just take every chance you get. Push your limits, because it's a good time to do it. And you come out with lessons, and it's like this guy. I was in this running club in Prague, and this guy was a Canadian. He'd been in Prague. He'd been in Europe 10 years, and he was in his 30s. Might have been early 40s, but I think it was mid 30s. And he was talking about how he was taking a couple years off of work to figure out what he wanted to do. And he had all these ideas about what he wanted to do, and he hadn't really settled on one yet. And I just, I was like, dude, you gotta try out the things you're interested in doing to know how things are gonna go. You can't just sit and philosophize and try to figure out life that way. You figure out life in the doing. Like, you try things you think you might enjoy or you think you might want to do, and how those experiences go will teach you what it is you're seeking and to what extent you can obtain it. But if it's just like sitting and thinking about it, gets you nowhere. You gotta risk the biscuit. You
have to go for it all. Take a chance.
Yeah. I will say, the older I get, the more and more, though, you have to fight the temptation to romanticize your own youth, or just romanticize youth in general. Yeah, and we're even young, comparatively, but yeah, just the more and more you're like, not that life was good, but just that.
It's like you cross the threshold without realizing it, where you can't really go back to some of that stuff.
You're too young to go back into it, and if you ever happen to be in a group of people that age, like, you're the old fuck in the group, you know what I mean? You're not a peer.
And you're aware of it too once you get there.
Yeah.
You can tell almost immediately. It's like, wow, the same thing I loved is now, it's not the same thing anymore,
Yeah.
It's like when you get up, you see you have a reunion or something with some friends, and you reminisce about the stuff, and let's go back there one weekend. You go to that place. It's not the place. It's the people at that time is what made these experiences. So you can't go back to it now because everyone else is married off or gone away or things just change.
Well, and I will say, I think part of it too is, how do I put this? You look back and you can see the opportunities and chances that you couldn't see at the time. Like, we were talking about this at the start of the podcast. It's like, we're talking about this with picking arguments, right? With and picking spouses and cheating. It's like, the older you get, the more you realize that certain chances and opportunities and challenges are actually rare. And so, like, looking back, I think when you don't realize that some things are very rare, and so when such things, I mean, like, the only thing I can think of as an example off the top of my mind is having sex with beautiful women. But there's other things in youth when, things that come to you easier when you're young, but you don't appreciate how rare they are in the overall scheme of life, and that, like, you kind of let them slip by or don't take advantage of them when you're young. But when you get older, then you start to realize more and more, it's like, man, there were a lot of things that could be done. A lot of things, like a lot of just traveling. Like, when you're young, you can travel all you want. You got some money, you got the freedom, you got the time. And the older you get, the more and more you're like, man, if I had only spent more of my youth traveling, or spent more of my youth, being outside.
Everybody, yeah.
Right. And you didn't appreciate it at the time.
Then you have the future pocket money fallacy. Oh, in 10 years I'll have more money. 20 years I'll have more money.
Right.
How many people did that actually happen to, I'd say a fair amount, but I would say it's 50-50 on those, whether you have more or less.
If I could tell you how many people at Columbia, I went to school at a school called Columbia University.
King's College.
Yeah, formerly known as King's College. Anyway.
Me too, I also know.
Austin, my classmate. If I could tell you how many people would tell me that, the pre-med people especially, like, okay, in 20 years I'll have enough money I can retire. Like, how many of these kids never had a youth, basically? Like, they were not living for the time they were in. It was just, I've got to do this thing, and I'm justifying it to myself by saying that in 30 years I'll begin living my life.
Can you imagine exchanging 30 years of your life? And for the occupation, it should be worth it. I hope for those of them that made it. Like, you imagine, like, you're literally exchanging the currency of, like, your most valuable thing you have is your time.
Well, your life, not even just your. I mean, like, literally, you're paying down 30 years of life because it's like, I mean, if you love medicine, you're not really paying it down. You get to do it. But let's say
you knowledge and stuff every day. You're getting your payment.
Right, but let's say someone who doesn't love it, like these people who are swallowing the pill, like you're paying down 30 years of your life, and for what? You know, to like go out and travel when you're 50 or 60. By then you
can't hike the hikes you wanted to do. You can't do the 12 milers. You can't do the intense skiing or the.
You got kids. You got responsibilities. You got community ties. Yeah, I mean, people who tell themselves that they're going to start doing stuff. Well, I know a lot of girls who are like this in this part of the world, in the fundamentalist capital of the world, Central America, the religious fundamentalism capital. I know a lot of girls who are like, they're waiting to get married before they start having their adventures. Like, I think part of the reason they're so interested in getting married is because they want to be having adventures. But like, once you get married, man, it's not that it's not an adventure in itself, but you can't go do those things. You know, you get pregnant, or you're trying to get pregnant, or you're trying to make enough money, or you're trying to buy a house. And so, you know, people who are telling themselves, like, I'm going to retire in 30 years, or like, I'm going to wait till I get married to do such things, such adventures, they're just lying to themselves. I can't think of another. They're faking. That's an excuse. It's just it's just an excuse. You know, that's my take.
That's all it is.
It's just I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this until, or I'm doing this so that I can in so many years. It's just, if you really believe that, like, you're lying to yourself.
You're kind of blinding yourself off to what could be, and then in 30 years you take those blinders off and you realize that it's not until then.
Yeah, and it's because there's always a mystical future. There's always a mystical future where the difficulties of the present are gone. And it's just never the case that mystical future arrives.
And then the worst part, you notice it's a lot of single women. Single whoever, you notice it's everything's gonna be better. 2 incomes are better than 1. Somehow double expenses fall. And now you have to have this person's permission for half the things you would normally do without asking.
Yeah.
What was a phone call to your parents saying, hey, I'll be gone for a week, is now, hey, can we do this? Sure, let's plan it 9 to a year from now, 9 months to a year.
Yeah.
The keymaster is stop by and he's going to take his cell phone.
So, yeah. Oh, can I have my phone?
Just runs away with it.
All right, I don't need my phone. Just make sure you don't call any of my... Don't call any of the numbers beginning with prostitute. All right, so what's been grinding your gears lately? What's been grinding your gears? Everything?
No, actually, it's about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Really, just what grinds my gears is just politics in general and the media's portrayal. And so I don't really go too deep into that because I just stopped watching both and now I'm happy again. It's like, if you don't like the narrative, change the story. Or in my case, if you don't like the TV, turn it off.
Well, if you don't like the story, don't read the book, maybe.
Yeah. The book is almost an investment, though. I'm part of this book.
Well,
in a very small form.
I mean,
probably the third man behind a tree would be my credited line. Third man.
You don't want to live in a world where something is wrong all the time.
No.
But that's the driver of the media, right? Like, something needs to be wrong all the time, and it's like the pronouns thing, right? It's like, it's not like the more things you fix, the fewer problems you have. It's like, the more things you fix, the less consequential the problem you're worrying about really is. You know, gender pronouns are not a form of mass oppression. I feel like there's some people who haven't drawn a sufficient distinction in their heads between the civil rights movement of the 60s and their bullshit wokeness right now.
There it is. I'm turning off the conversation.
What?
Use the magic word. Woke.
Oh, I'm turned off. Yeah, and I feel like people want to be. They want to have been in the 60s. They want to have been one of those people.
They say they want to have been there.
You don't buy it?
I think they want people to think they wanted to be there. If I would have been this, I would have done this. I'm like, no, you'd have been just another statistic or something back then. And now, at least, in today's age, you have a name with it, which is kind of nice, and it's more than what a lot of people got back then.
Are you on Twitter?
I have one at Lucky Man Smith. I made it for a college class.
Okay.
Lucky, and I haven't used it since, and that was 2014.
Because I feel like that's the real wokeverse. Like that's the wokeverse.
Willy Wonka. Now, if I said the name Blanca, would you think Black Willy Wonka, or would you think of an Australian guy?
I'm thinking of a
Blanca,
Latina girl. Blanca.
Hey, speaking, we're talking about the pronouns and the whole Latin. The Latins are struggling with it more because now everything's Latinx. But in Latin America and the Hispanic parts of the world, assigning a gender to things is important. So taking that away just to accommodate people like that. Dude, listen, I don't keep up much. I follow one guy on Facebook. I'll keep him nameless. Really good guy. There's no reason, but I don't have permissions and whatnot. And
yeah, I like to keep names out of it unless I feel like they would want to be mentioned.
Right. I'm not that close with this guy, so I don't think he'd want to be mentioned. But,
or if I really fucking hate you, I'll mention your name on this shit.
I'll mention you by name in my suicide note.
Claire. Fucking white-haired Claire. I tried to be nice to this girl for fucking years, and she made my life hell. Fuck you, Claire. Anyway, you were talking about something before. You triggered me. Triggered me, you asshole.
You're now woke. You've been triggered. Boom. Triggered.
Trigger warning.
Trigger finger. We were bringing it back to the pronouns. But
yeah, you're talking about Latina. And
they have much more pride in their pronouns as the way they are. And now, for again, accommodating to, I believe, every, and especially those, amongst us who have been trivialized more than others, they should have a voice or not, but changing a whole language. I believe you should, not necessarily censor, but you can tiptoe or just be careful what you say, but changing the way the sentence structure and the language is actually, to me, that's gone a bit far. And I think, there's definitely an argument to be made, the inclusivity or, hey, what has been. And most people kind of flip-flop towards the inclusivity these days, but I think everything, pendulum, man, it's all going to go back. Wow, we did that? I don't know if everyone's going to say that, but I feel like they will. It's kind of like when girls shave the side of their head. That's something you have to live with for a couple months so that hair grows back. I think this is one of those things that's a jerk reaction. Yeah, it's stylish for a week or two, maybe a month. I don't know. I never shaved one side of my head, but that's my my model, my example for that. That's something you can do in the moment. It looks great, but over time, I have to live with this now. What monster have I created?
I'm chewing. I want to respond, but I'm chewing sausage.
Let me tell you about a song I wrote.
I'm with you, and I think it's important when it comes to an issue. If you're not one of the people directly affected, you need to not tread lightly, but always understand you may not understand. No,
there's a very good chance I don't.
I don't. I've worked in inner cities at some schools, and that's given me a better understanding, let's say, of police brutality. But I haven't had to grow up in a neighborhood where the police treat you unfairly, which does happen. And so, my understanding, let's just on that issue, for example, is limited. I don't think, so a couple of things. One, you need to always tread lightly, but I also think that sometimes, our opinions, we are considered individuals. We read, we think about things, we take things, we joke a lot, but we do think about things seriously. And I do think, just because we haven't been involved in it doesn't mean we can't have an intellectually valid opinion on the issue.
That's fair.
I do feel like sometimes contrary opinions to the wokeverse or just takes on issues sometimes get brushed aside because you're not one of the marginalized groups. But it doesn't mean that, people can't have a freaking opinion on what's going on.
Only online it doesn't.
Right, online,
they'll tell you.
You cis white, heterosexual white male.
Yeah, to me, is the whole cis and...
what does that even mean? What does it mean to be cis? I don't even understand what that means.
I take these surveys on SurveyMonkey, and there's one thing, only 90s kids will know this. It's name your gender, male or female. Now there's 20 options. What do you consider yourself? I'm where's the standard? I'm a guy, and I don't really, orientation stuff doesn't really bother me, what people actually are. That's not my
identify it. I don't give a fuck what you identify yourself as.
Changing what was considered the standard. I get you don't want people, straight is normal, because there shouldn't be a normal, but statistics will tell you otherwise. But cis, now they added this, I'm no, cis, that's a sister, you spelled it with C, and we all know C is for suspension. But I take these surveys, and some will be just male, female, prefer not to answer. There's other ones, male, female, gender non-fluid, binary, something, blah, blah, blah. And I just like how do they even track this? You know, there could be so many people joking. Like I've almost jokingly picked those half the time just because I don't want to be, consistently tracked.
Right.
Because I think these websites, I don't think they're giving me this change for my opinions on surveys. They're doing it in data mining. I'm 100%.
Oh yeah. Well, and tracking cookies. You got to get Ghostery. You got to block the tracking cookies, and you got to get a VPN. Block your VPN from being seen. That goes a long way. If you use Firefox, don't use Chrome or Edge. Use Firefox. Use Ghostery to block tracking cookies, and use a VPN to block your IP address, and that goes a long way to keeping you from being tracked. There are still ways to track you. And you want to make sure you're setting your browser to not keep you logged in on sites, to clear your cookies, all that. If you do that, I've found personally that when I do that, my ads just become a bunch of random nonsense. But when I stop doing that,
I'd rather have the random nonsense.
What?
I'd rather have the random than
right.
Hey, you watch this music video. There are some
right.
shoes in the background. Buy some shoes.
Yeah, I don't get that. Now, when I stop doing that, when I start using Google Chrome because it's more convenient, or I stop deleting my autosave stuff, then I start to notice that the information I see just magically becomes a lot more tailored to the stuff I was seeing before. So, a little bit of internet hygiene. No, on the cis thing, I feel like for me...
To me, that's newer than coffee days.
Cis?
Yeah.
Well, I don't get it, but here's how I feel. We were talking about someone last night, a friend of mine. And he, I'm gonna change things to protect identities. Okay. But this is a person who Jose. This person was someone who posts stuff regularly to Facebook all the time. He puts up political stuff pretty much every other day. Heavy Twitter user, and this is someone who I've known since high school, and it's he's always been trying to figure things out. He grew up in a pretty privileged home, and, he has a very loving family, someone who supports him no matter what he does. So, he goes off to a nice college, his family's paying for it, and he calls me one evening when he's around 20, like, Jacob, I need to go on meds. That's been my problem all along. I need to go on meds. Once I go to meds, everything's going to be okay. And Jose was a cool guy. I don't know what your problem is, Jose, why you feel something needs to be fixed. But anyway, Jose goes on meds, family still loves him, etc., etc. Jose ends up dropping out of college. This is what I need to do. I have to do this because colleges are just oppressive structures, just reinforcing the patriarchy, etc., etc. His family still loves him. It's not enough. So then Jose, very talented musician, gives up music completely, just decides that he's going to work as a bartender. This is what I need to do. This is the right thing to do. A few years later, Jose comes out as gay. I've been gay my whole life, etc., etc. And I guess with the sexualities and the identities, how do I put this? Look, you identify what? Delicately, amen. You do whatever you want. I don't care. You want to go identify yourself as a pillow for all I care. I really don't have a problem with it, but I do think that it's indicative of something to where I think people feel like there's this magic fairy dust over finally discovering your sexuality or finally pinpointing your sexuality. And in truth, gender identity and sexuality are incredibly fluid, to the point where it's probably useless to give yourself any kind of identifier, no matter 50 or 100 identifiers isn't enough. These things are so fluid and so random that to try to give it an identity, no matter how open and free an identity, is itself dishonest. And I think what people are doing with this is they're just trying. There's a lot of people, some people have some void, some anxiety, some feeling of guilt, some desire to burn down a good life, some guilt over a decent upbringing, and then they do these things because it's like an act of rebellion, because it's a means to try to push against the limits. It's a means to try to find whatever the answer to the problem is. My problem has been that I've secretly been a woman all along, and I need to completely change who I am because this is the thing that's been making me unhappy.
Is this a opening live on air? Is this what?
Huh?
I'm joking.
Oh, you want to?
You're like, I'm secretly a woman all along. I'm like, oh, is this?
Oh, no.
Is this genuine? Live on air. Viewers are gonna love this.
No, I'm not transitioning to a woman anytime soon.
Maybe later.
Yeah.
30 years down the road.
Look, I don't have any desire, but I guess I just feel like people want to find, some people grasp onto religion, some people grasp onto social activism, some people grasp onto needing to change their identity, but I feel like there are some people for whom, gender conversion therapy or expanding their notion of who they are or what they're into is greatly beneficial, and they feel like they're living a dishonest life, and this is a way for them to finally be honest, and that's cool and great. But I hope we realize that when something is cool, when something is like edgy, when something is like has social currency, you've got to be a little skeptical of it, because there is also in these identification frenzies something of a grasping after something to numb the pain for some people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. So at the very beginning of the story, they're very active on social media, right? Isn't that to be very active is fun and all, and that's the way you can keep a social life in where you have to have a presence somewhat. But it reminded me of this. I found this quote. This is a picture. I don't know this guy. Do you know Duncan Trussell? Have you heard of this guy?
I think I have. Yeah.
I had a picture of him. I don't know where he's from, and he might have actually said this just from the internet, so I can just put his name underneath this quote. But he's like, some poor phoneless fool is probably sitting next to a waterfall somewhere, totally unaware of how angry and scared he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I love that quote. I keep this quote. That's probably a year ago. I took a screenshot of that thing. Like, that's to me life. Nowadays unaware is now changed to ignorant, but to that guy, that's living life. You're kind of avoiding problems. Maybe you should at least have a say or be aware to. But wouldn't that be great? Isn't that the great? I love that quote so much.
Well, and you never know. How do I put this? You need to have faith in your own ability to handle the things that come. Because I think fear of the future and anxiety of the future is, first of all, nearly always misguided. Because if you read 10 years ago what the doomsayers were saying, the present hasn't turned out like the doomsayers were saying. And there are things that people worry about now. AI, they worry about government surveillance, they worry about China. There's a whole bunch of worries. And I'm not saying that bad things can't and won't happen. Bad things will happen. But I guess it's not worth the psychic energy to try to predict them on a large scale, because one, you're not going to be able to prevent them, really. And two, you're very unlikely to be actually able to predict what's going to happen. Like, who would have predicted COVID? There's going to be a pandemic sometime. Isn't a prediction, Mr. Gates.
Pandemics happen every 5 years, but
yeah,
even on this of a global scale as it was, that's another thing. No one could have predicted it would have got this big. They usually just stick to some small region in Africa. Yeah,
things will happen, and they generally won't be as bad for you as you might fear in your apocalyptic fearing, and generally you'll be able to handle them when they come. And that's enough.
Anyway, take the trip, take the chance, roll the dice. Especially if you're 19.
Amen! All right, let's get in a quick word from our sponsor. Scrabble! When your life's gone to hell, nothing makes sense, and you're as boring as a piece of cardboard, but you still have to socialize with your wife, who's tired of you sitting in front of the damn TV, play Scrabble. You make words, you see letters, all the things people love. Scrabble. Your life's gone to shit if you're playing Scrabble, but it's better than killing yourself. Scrabble.
Allegedly.